So we now know that one of the major reasons why this shift from voluntary to mandatory uh, health coverage has failed is because the government does not really have a good enough database that goes down to the community and identifies people. We'll see later why this is important. But for now, we'll go through the steps of shifting from voluntary to compulsory contributions, both on the government side for the indigent and for the individuals who do not, who can manage to pay. One of the very first things to do is ask yourself the question, where will the government get the money? Because already we know that these are resource poor settings. And when you introduce such concepts, the first question the government asks, they say, we have a lot of debt, public, we have quite a number of individuals who lack coverage and a very high unemployment level. So, where will we get the money? Your task as an advisor is to advise the government about where to find this money. We all know that countries are developing. We all know that there is a general and very gradual shift from debt or this kind of grants to some form of loans as a country increases in terms of its economic ability. This economic ability as a country grows, they call it the income level. So, as countries are shifting from lower and lower middle income towards middle and upper middle income, you find that there's a lot more business going on. The government is able to collect a lot more revenues than it can when a country is extremely weak, especially the private sector is structurally weak. Now, for the very few countries that are still facing some really serious difficulties in terms of mobilizing funds, what can we do for them? How can we advise them? There are countries like South Sudan, Burundi, Guinea Conakry that have really never managed to balance their accounts. For such countries, we need to be responsible and develop systems where the donors and government and a bit of the private sector come together, pull in some funding, and the national health insurance keeps bringing in the small scale kind of or the larger scale kind of employers, meaning the government, the teachers' unions, and all, to pull some funding into a national health insurance. But such countries might not be able to pay for their own insurance for everybody to access insurance or access health services. They might not be able to subsidize. So, what do these countries do? What do we do for these countries? We can also only tell them for now, try as much as you can to bring in people into a pool that are employed, put them into some kind of pool, and develop your insurance system slowly, gradually. There's nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with that. Now, for countries that are in the lower income but are also shifting towards middle income, this is now going towards the majority of countries in this world. There's probably somewhere in the lower middle income or the middle income. How do you then ensure that you are developing an insurance system or attaining some universal health coverage that works? How do you do this? Number one, you need to first of all begin to gradually expand the integration of health impact assessments into your capital projects. Most countries receive capital projects or injections of foreign direct investment or any other kinds of investment, most countries receive amounts ranging from 2 billion to 5 billion dollars a year. How then do you tap into this? You need evidence, first of all, that convinces the practitioners or the policymakers in your infrastructure, land, and other kind of projects that you can be able to generate some income from these projects. The World Bank, for example, has this amount, I think a 2% amount in their projects, which is dedicated to social, gender, HIV, health, other investments. So if you get about 100 billion in terms of investments, they expect you to put about 2 billion, let's say shillings or kwacha into social investments. Now, some countries mess this up, let's be honest. Some countries let the investor decide what to do. And what does the investor do? In the case of Uganda, at one point, one contractor bought shots and said they had invested in social programs. Some plant flower beds in the north of Kenya and say they have invested in social projects. But one country that has done it well is the Rwanda government and recently the Kenya government, which has taken a budget line, developed a budget line, and they take the money that comes from these social projects and divert it into this account, which is then used to uh, which is then invested in particular programs such as HIV from the urban roads development levy or such kinds of things, or from special projects, any capital project. Now, if Kenya was doing this very well, they have been able to receive about 36. Kenya receives about over $3 billion annually in foreign direct investments in capital projects. You know, capital projects are projects that to do with infrastructure, land, anything to do with infrastructure development, buildings, and so on, roads, railway. So these kinds of projects have a lot of money coming in, and about a percentage of it could go to social projects, be it health, education, water, sanitation, and so on. That's a lot of money by any standards. $2 billion, 2% of $2 billion is quite a bit of money, about $20 million, which can go into digging almost over 100 boreholes or developing water and sewage systems in quite a number of countries. So that's one of the ways in which you can tap into development funding or private sector funding and obtain some money for your health projects.